2023. This meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public and board members, the meeting and our hearing, actually not a hearing, just a meeting, will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. This meeting will be recorded by the local scene, formerly known as pac-tv. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so by viewing the Duxbury Government Access channels, Verizon 39 or Comcast 9. Viewers can also visit the localscene.media/Duxbury for information about Duxbury programming, including streaming and watching replays on Duxbury YouTube. With that, I call this meeting to order, and our first item will be the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now enter open forum period. This is an opportunity for folks to suggest items for the agenda. We can't respond as it's not on the current agenda, so I'd ask you to keep your comments brief, and certainly you may follow up with the town manager if you have any further thoughts. I'll start with the board. Does anybody have anything for open forum? Go ahead, Amy.
Just a quick one. I stopped in up at the clerk's office on my way down, and they've been doing double duty up there with all the voting and all that they do. So I just want to, give a shout out to them, and I think we're all grateful that we have such a great town clerk and that whole department, and this is a busy election season, so I'm looking forward to it being done.
No doubt.
Amen. The Department of Two.
Yeah.
Doing all that work.
Yeah, it's tons.
Actually, Susan told me that already half the town has voted.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep, a little more than half, I think.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to heading out there tomorrow.
Go ahead, Brad.
Two things, Mr. Chairman. One, I see Sheila and Mark are here. I just want to thank them publicly. Today we had an email blast go out about hydrant flushing. Well, that doesn't sound like it's particularly notable. It came with a map. I hadn't seen that done before, and I thought that was a terrific idea. So thank you for doing that. Also, I participated in a focus group at the library this past Saturday. I just want to acknowledge the library director, Denise Garvin, trustees Martha Dennison and Lester Lloyd. They put together a couple hours worth of a program to find out what folks are looking for in the library going forward. They are accepting surveys. That survey is still open through the DFL webpage. And I offered to pass along that there will be another focus group this Wednesday, the 6th, at the library from 10 to 12, and one at the Senior Center on December 4th from 12 to 2.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Any members of the public? I know I heard Jim on there earlier. Jim, Mr. Lampert, would you like to introduce yourself and address?
I'm Jim Lampert, 148 Washington Street, and as most of you know, I basically was on the zoning board for a number of years and with the fiscal advisory committee for another dozen years. I received over email today a copy of the warrant for the special town meeting, and I started to read it maybe an hour ago, and I just wanted to have some quick comments with respect to Article 1, which, as you all know, is this MBTA. I don't have a position one way or another on the substance of the article, but having started to go through it with something resembling a fine-tooth comb, it seems fairly clear to me that the article is simply not ready for prime time. It has a lot of questions wrapped into it. I haven't even made it through all the way through the article, but just a few examples. If you start off on the article itself, it says that it's to see if the town will add a new section 440. You then go down and read the rest of it, and you see there is also a section 450. I would suspect that what the article preferably would say would be to add articles 440 and 450. Because as it's now written, it only adds one of them. Keep on going down a little farther, and I'll go to 440.2, section 2. It says in one sentence that none of the standards and procedures of all the underlying districts shall apply. And then the last two sentences say, but oh, some should. You then keep going on, and there are all, one of the things that that section does is it takes out all of the definitions, but terms that are defined in the rest of the zoning bylaw are used often in truncated or somewhat different form in this proposed article. And frankly, it makes it almost impossible to figure out what those terms are supposed to mean. Do they have their normal meaning, or are they supposed to have the meanings that are set forth in the article? If you talk, refers in number 4 of that section, to character areas, I don't know what those are. If you go down into 5, it says lots shall be divided into units. We're talking about dwelling units, which is not the term that's used, or something else. Obviously, there was a great rush to push this article together, but I'd suggest that the article, and more particularly the proposed zoning amendments themselves, need quite a lot of work well before we get to town meeting. And I'd be perfectly willing to sit down with people and work through to see what I think should be done to this article, simply to turn it into a workable article without regard to whether or not the town decides to vote for it or against it. But as it is right now, I could not recommend that anybody pass this article. I think it will create far more problems than it potentially will solve.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lampert. We do have it on the agenda later this evening, too. I don't know if you want to stick around or pop back on in probably a half an hour.
I just didn't see it on the agenda.
Yes, it was,
Page 2.
it's on page 2 of the agenda.
Where on?
So we can't,
Where is it?
we're not going to,
What section on page? Oh, MBTA communities, I'm sorry.
but your
That's
points are
one at
well
the top.
taken, and we'll definitely be deliberating about it later. So,
Okay.
all right. Any other open forum items? All right. With that, we'll move on to new business. It's 6:37, so we're on time here. We have a public hearing regarding a liquor license amendment, Action 1 for RBSBW Inc., premises located at 46 Depot Street. So let's start with Action 1. And I believe we're joined here by counsel for Roach Brothers, Attorney
Yes.
Fury.
Fury, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Alex Fury. I'm with the law firm of Considine and Fury in Boston, and I represent RBSBW Inc. We're here for 2 actions, but I'll explain both of them, and they're interrelated. Both have been pre-approved by the ABCC. Action 1, as we'll call it, is a request for a change of beneficial interest, filing to achieve corporate reorganization of Roach Brothers Supermarkets in anticipation of a future sale. The amendment to the application for change of beneficial interest for the licensee, RBSBW Inc., to change the name of one parent company, Roach Brothers Supermarkets Inc., to Roach Brothers Midco LLC. And that would result in a change of its status to an LLC for tax purposes. And also in conjunction with that, to insert a holding company, Roach Brothers Holdco Inc., as the grandparent company of the licensee. The licensee will stay the same, RBSBW Inc. So Action 1 in essence is for tax purposes, to realign the corporate structure of the company in anticipation for Action 2, which is going to be a sale of the majority of the shares of Roach Brothers Supermarkets to a new majority shareholder. And I'm happy to explain what Action 2 is.
Well, I guess just for the public and for our board, what, if anything, does this mean with respect to the,
Can we have an motion to open the public hearing?
that's a good point. Thank you, Fernando.
Yep, no problem.
Let's see. I move that the Select Board open the public hearing regarding the liquor license amendment for RBSBW Inc., DBA Brothers Marketplace, for change of ownership, interest, issuance/transfer of stock/new stockholder, and change of corporate structure, called Action 1, for the premises located at 46 Depot Street.
Second.
Roll call vote, please. Start with,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye?
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Great. All right, and we heard a little bit from the applicant, but I'll start with this question. We have a Brothers Market here in Duxbury. What does this do, if anything, to the liquor license or their sales or anything like that in Duxbury?
Absolutely nothing. The day-to-day operations of the store are going to remain exactly the same for liquor license and for employees, for all aspects of the store are going to remain exactly the same as a result of the corporate reorganization and also as part of the subsequent sale. And I can explain that in further detail. As I noted at the start, in anticipation of this transaction for all of its stores, we went to the ABCC and we pre-vetted the transaction with the ABC to explain this corporate reorganization. It would explain the nature of the sale, and that's already been approved by the ABCC. So that's why we're here today to ask the Select Board for their approval as well. And again, just to emphasize, nothing's going to change on a day-to-day basis for any consumers in Duxbury.
Great. Does anybody from the board have any questions about Action 1?
Just an observation, I did attempt to go through the phone book size filing, and I'm glad council's here to explain it, because there's lots of action going on in the corporate realm regarding the organization itself, but very little, it seems, as to the operation here in Duxbury, and I think that's what council just confirmed for us.
Cindy, do you have
Yeah.
anything?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
Okay, I'm ready for a vote if you folks are, on Action 1.
Can we listen to Action 2 and then vote both the votes?
It has to be opened as a separate hearing
Yeah.
at
Oh, okay. Never
6:45.
mind. Yep.
Yep.
I guess I'm interested in hearing about, and I know council is saying that there'll be no change, but there was a lot of discussion when Brothers was opening, and, you know, people like Brothers, they like the small market, they like, you know, what they get there, so I'm just hoping that, you know, what you're saying is, you know, that there's going to be no change, but there is going to be a change of ownership.
That's right, and so the day-to-day activities, so just to highlight,
Can
so that's
we- can
Action
we-
1, but
wait,
Action 2, if you want to read it for,
Can we-
explain that, I'm
Fernando?
happy to do it.
Can we talk about it? Can we vote on this one, and then Action 2 is the change of ownership, right? So we
That's
keep
correct.
on moving between another public hearing and this public hearing, so,
Can I just let him answer Amy's question?
well, but that's for the act,
That's
that's for
fine.
the
We
public
can
hearing number
talk.
2.
We can talk about it in Action 2.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it as well, answer Amy's question, but let's stick to the public hearing, right?
All right. Does your answer to question, the subsequent impact your,
It's, yes, no.
Are you okay with Action
No,
1?
I can segment them. Sometimes it's helpful to have an overall conversation and then get down into
I
the
agree.
weeds, but I'm fine with.
Did you have a
if Fernando
specific-
feels strongly, I'm fine.
no, but I'm chairing this.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
No, I
that is
think it
gonna
was
impact Action 1?
answered. No, I'm
Okay.
good.
All right, I'll take a motion.
I move that the Select Board, acting as the local licensing authority, approve their liquor license amendment for RBSBW Inc., DBA Brothers Marketplace, for a change of ownership interest, issuance/transfer of stock/new stockholder, and change of corporate structure, called Action 1, for the premises located at 46 Depot Street, for the all alcoholic beverages license number 89883-PK-0300, subject to the requirements of the Town of Duxbury and the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye.
Amy, aye.
I move to
Cindy,
close.
aye.
Cindy, aye.
Sorry. I move to close the public hearing on action 1.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Excellent.
It's 6:45.
It is. Perfect, right on time.
I move that the Select Board open the public hearing regarding liquor license amendment for RBSBW Inc., DBA Brothers Marketplace, for a change of ownership interest and issuance/transfer of stock/new stockholder, called Action 2, for the premises located at 46 Depot Street.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Attorney Fury, could you please describe what this action is?
Certainly. So this is an amendment application for change of beneficial interest where Michael Bizzuto and the Bizzuto Inc.'s employee stock ownership plan will buy 51% of the shares of the licensee RBSBW Inc. Bizzuto's is a Connecticut-based company that has been served as the primary distributor of food for Roach Brothers. Roach Brothers is a family-owned business for many years, privately owned, and as part of, for estate planning purposes, they're selling the majority of their shares, but they're going to remain a minority owner in the business. So again, Bizzuto, who's shared a long relationship with Roach Brothers, is going to be the majority owner. But again, the name of the business, how the business is operated, the employees, the day-to-day operation of the business is not going to change in any manner. Again, we pre-vetted this change in beneficial interest with the ABCC. It's already been approved by the ABCC, and we're here tonight seeking the approval of the Select Board. And just to emphasize how much we value the Duxbury community, and we enjoy servicing the community, and we're going to continue to do it in the same high standards that we've done in the past.
Amy, did you have a question?
No, I think it was just answered. I just emphasize that, the folks in town like the small market. They like, I think, the quality and the service that they get there, and I'm just hoping that things remain the same.
Will the Roach Brothers family be still involved in
They're the minority owner.
in
Yeah, they're the
management?
minority ownership, but the leadership will remain the same. So the folks who have been leading Roach Brothers in terms of the CEO and the officers are going to stay the same. The shareholders are going to go, some of the shareholders are going to go from a majority to minority situation.
Anybody have a question? Go ahead, Brian.
Just one, and thank you, Council, for clarifying a voluminous amount of information for us. There are 8 communities that require liquor license amendments as a result of this action. I'm curious if you've participated in similar hearings with other communities, and have they voiced any concerns with Action 2, because it's changing the majority shareholder of the licensee?
So we have, I'm going to be appearing in all 9 communities where they serve alcohol. So far, we've appeared before the City of Boston Licensing Committee, and they approved both transactions, Action 1 and Action 2, and did not have any concerns. And we're going to be appearing before other communities as well. But Duxbury happened to be early on in the list.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Fernando?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to word it. Is Attorney Fury, right now, there's no change, but as a majority shareholder in the future, they may decide to close stores that they deem non-performing or not part of their overall strategy for Roach Brothers. So you can't promise that nothing will change here in Duxbury, right? Is that the understanding, or is that the kind of the I presume there's an agreement being signed between there's there's going to be something legal for the sale, right? And I'm just wondering, just exploring, is there anything in the sales document which prevents the majority shareholder for taking such actions?
No, the reason why they're buying the majority shareholder is that it's in fact very attractive to the buyer, to Bozzuto's, that the stores that in the communities that Roche Brothers operates in, that's the value that they're getting. So I have not heard any intentions of closing stores or anything of that nature. In fact, just the opposite. That's why they're buying the stores, because they're really well performing, successful stores that they want to be a part of.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Is there a concern we're not drinking enough?
Yeah.
Any questions from the public? With that, I'll take a motion.
I move that the Select Board, acting as the local licensing authority, approve the liquor license amendment for RBS BW Inc., DBA Brothers Marketplace, for a change of ownership interest and the issuance/transfer of stock/ new stakeholder, so-called Action 2, for the premises located at 46 Depot Street, for the all alcoholic beverages license number 89883-PK-0300, subject to the requirements of the Town of Duxbury and the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
I move that the Select Board close a public hearing on Action 2.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you so much. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right.
So we got to adjourn and reconvene.
Yes, we're going to enter as Water and Sewer Commissioners, and I'll just ask for a motion to enter that.
I move that the Select Board adjourn the meeting in order to meet as the Water and Sewer Commissioners with the intent of reconvening as the Select Board afterward.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye.
Amy, aye.
Yeah.
All right. We have a discussion pertaining to the installation of proposed water service lines at Camp Wing, 742 Keene Street. And this will be presented by Duxbury Construction.
Actually, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
And we'll start with Rainey.
Thank you. In your packets, you'll find a memo which reads as follows. Dear members, last week, DPW Director Sheila Scarzi, Mark Cloud, Water and Sewer Superintendent, and I met with Freeman Boyton of Duxbury Construction and Ben Palmer, the Director of Operations from Crossroads, to discuss the proposal on the attached plan. As you will see, the plan submitted by Duxbury Construction depicts a proposed water line installation in connection at 742 Keene Street, Camp Wing. This issue is before the Water Commissioner since the Duxbury Water Department Rules and Regulations, Section 6, entitled Meters, states the following. All water services shall be individually metered, except as otherwise determined by the Water Commissioners in special or unusual circumstances, with emphasis added on the last four words. The entirety of Section 6 is attached here too and can be found in the complete set of regulations. As a result of our conversation, the DPW has offered the following recommendation. The DPW does not recommend that the Water Commissioners approve the proposed water connection at 742 Keene Street, Camp Wing. As proposed, the domestic water service layout is inconsistent with industry best practices, which recommend individual services and meters for each building facility. Numerous water industry guidelines and standards, including publications issued by the EPA, the American Water Works Association, and the Mass DEP, promote individual services and meters, minimization of excessively long laterals, and elimination of cross-connection hazards. Accordingly, individual services and meters are typically required in municipal water department rules and regulations, including the Town of Duxbury Water Department rules and regulations, which again states all water services shall be individually metered except as otherwise determined by the Water Commissioners in special or unusual circumstances. Piggybacking multiple buildings off of a single service connection results in excessive service lateral length, which increases head loss, reduces system pressures, and amplifies potential hazards associated with cross connections. These concerns are augmented under the conditions of simultaneous water demand, such as what would be anticipated in this case, where a cafeteria, barn, infirmary, pool, and laundry facility are all proposed to feed off of a single 2-inch domestic service. As a professional engineer with a background in water distribution system engineering, I cannot endorse the proposed water service layout. Individual service lines and individual meters are the appropriate design methodology for the Camp Wing campus. Depending on the direction of the water commissioners wish to take, we'll offer you a motion accordingly for your consideration this evening. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. And the applicant is here to discuss.
May I ask a question, just so
Yeah,
I
sure.
can understand? Could I get a definition of head loss, please?
You lose pressure. The longer
Can
that-
you go to the microphone? Because I'm sure anybody listening to the, or I mean, maybe everybody knows what
No,
head
no, no,
loss
no.
is. I
Good
don't know.
question.
Water and sewer superintendent, the head loss would be a loss of pressure and flow.
Loss of pressure and flow. Thank you.
All right. All right.
Good evening, I'm
Boynton.
Freeman Boynton, Duxbury Construction, here representing Camp Wing. Several years ago, they decided to update the barn. They have a very lovely old antique barn, and they decided they were going to make it pretty and use it as a function hall and all that kind of stuff. And they applied to the CPC for funding in order to cover some of the costs of that work. But then as they progressed along towards making it functional as a hall, they realized that they're going to need a sprinkler system. And so we all got together and we talked about how we're going to get town water to this structure in order to accommodate a sprinkler system, fire suppression sprinkler system inside the building. I think at the time when we discussed this, there was not town water available anywhere near. But since that time, the town has, in order to eliminate some dead-end mains in town, they ran the water service across the highway on Temple Street. You can see it strapped to the side of the bridge. And they ran it up Myrtle Street and tied it in with a connection that goes up North Street, which eliminated another dead end. I think as part of that upgrade, they also switched the town to a two-zone system. So now we have that help to feed the higher pressure zone on the north side of town versus the low zone where we are down here. The pressure's greater on that side of town than it is down here. Or it's not necessarily greater, but they feed it with more pressure so that they have enough. So there are some houses that barely had any water pressure on the upper floor. So then so in order to feed this building the water, we've got to tie onto the water main by River Street and near Temple Street, just our side of the bridge, and run it up the street. And we're thinking, while we're in the process of doing that, because it's such a chore for them to test the water, given their use, they have to go through a fairly rigorous testing program, and kind of be like an operator of a water utility themselves. And that's a bit of a chore for them. So they're thinking, if we're going to run the water main up to the street to feed the barn, why don't we run it into the farmhouse also, which is a 4 or 5 bedroom facility that provides water for a lot of the counselors that live on staff during the summer months. And then we were thinking that would also run it up and feed the infirmary and the new pool house. But a lot of these buildings are seasonal use, so we find it, for a lot of reasons, we'd like to minimize the number of services into the building and the number of meters, so that when the season's over, the 2-month summer season is over, they can flush these lines out and winterize them so they don't freeze. The pool house won't be heated, and the infirmary won't be heated, and the barn won't be heated, and I think the farmhouse is the only thing that's going to stay heated year-round. So if we can turn off those supplies to those structures, that would make it easier for them, rather than having to remove meters and figure out how we're going to clean the service out so it doesn't freeze and that kind of stuff. But when we first started this process, getting down the street to feed these particular buildings and then running down to feed other buildings, it's kind of turned into a major undertaking. To install 1,000 feet of 8-inch main down Keene Street is well over $1,000 in cost, and at the time when we first started thinking about it, it was $1,500 per service connection, and you guys just voted in a $7,500 per service connection fee. So that adds another $30,000 to the cost. And so what we'd like to do is commonly done in the rest of the town. Everybody has a line going into their house. And then if they want a pool house or a guest house or want to run town water out to the barn, they tap it off the house and they run it out to the house. You asked the question about what is head loss. We would size the individual services to feed these general buildings in the area with a line that's adequate enough so that we wouldn't have a problem with head loss. If the shower runs a little slower, then it's not a big deal. The kid will still get cleaned off and it'll be just fine. So that's kind of the justification of us meeting with you here tonight, is to determine whether or not we can carry on as most homeowners in the town of Duxbury have done and just kind of put in a service, one service with one meter.
I'll start with, go ahead, Fernando.
Yeah, so just to be clear then, right? So basically, if you're required to install 6 meters, therefore that's 6 times $7,000 each, is that right?
Correct.
And so this is an opportunity for you. The suggestion is, look, save us some money and install 1 meter, it's $7,000. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right?
That's a good portion of it. We'd also, in order to feed the other buildings in the way that we're being asked to, it's another 1,000 or 800 feet of additional water main that we have to run down the street, and that's another $100,000.
Another, how much? 100,000.
Correct.
So okay, I'm getting confused. So what's the difference in total price then for between 1 meter and 6 meters? $130,000.
Correct.
The impact of that, the 7,000 whatever times 6 for the town, but Count Wing has to pay you the balance there to.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm asking you to take a lot of work away from me.
Any other questions from board? Go
I
ahead.
have a couple of questions and a comment. So you mentioned that Camp Wing was, for some reason, testing, that they're required to test the water beyond what we all use town water in this room.
Their current well water, I guess I didn't make that clear.
Okay. So
They have well water that feeds these buildings now. And because they supply water to so many children, they're required to do this
so that's why they would like to get on town water.
Exactly.
I understand why they would want
Then you folks will do
to.
the testing.
Okay, and then, so
But you normally do it anyways.
So the other thing you mentioned was that the meters, having the individual meters, as is being suggested by our water department, and I'm hard pressed to go against what our water guy is saying.
I don't blame you.
You're suggesting that the meters themselves, the individual meters for each building, make it more difficult to drain the system for seasonal purposes? I don't understand that.
Correct. If we ran the 8-inch main all the way down the street, and we have a shut-off for each building, then the town has to come out, remove the meter, turn the water off, but because the water line comes up out of the ground into the building, there's water in that pipe, and you have to find some way to get it out, put a pump down it, and it just makes it a chore. If we have 1 meter going into one building, and then it hits the meter, and then each line runs laterally off of that, we can hook up an air compressor and blow that line out. And very simply, just like you would a sprinkler system for a residential home. It just simplifies it. Paul's here, he's the manager of the property itself, the facilities, and he winterizes all the lines in the property. And I think he would much rather try and do it the way he normally does than to find some way to.
The last thing I just want to clarify is that you said, so the cost for the project is what versus the cost of the project with all of the individual meters? How much of a cost difference is it for Camp Wing?
Well, the cost difference is
The
about
cost difference.
$130,000.
So 130 total to put in the separate meters.
Because we have to run a whole bunch of 8-inch main, ductile iron main down the street. That's $100 a foot. And it's
Okay, and then if
an
I guess,
additional 800 feet plus the additional $7,500 per service.
Yeah.
so Camp Wing is a nonprofit. I'm
Correct.
assuming it's a nonprofit. We all know what they do. They do some great stuff. They have a great camp there for inner city kids or more, and they do it's a terrific program. I had a daughter there that did overnight counseling for years, and you know, it's really a great organization. So, you know, that being said, if you know,
more money that they'll
you know,
have to-
I am hard pressed to go against, you know, so I'm going to struggle with this because, you know, the cost is, you know, the impacts to them for the great works that they do versus, yeah. So I'll let somebody else talk.
Yeah, well, I want to get Cindy. She's up on the screen, but I don't want to forget about her.
Hi, I'm glad you're not forgetting about me. I just had a question. There's a lot of development going on in that same area across the street. There's new homes, there's new developments going in. And I'm just wondering, when you're talking about the 8-inch water mains, where are those water mains coming from? Are they coming from a different direction from Union Street, or?
Yes, those services come from a water main that the contractor who's developing that property is installing from Union Street.
Okay, and is there any way to piggyback onto those? I mean, the last house seems pretty close to Camp Wing.
That's a much greater distance from where we're tying on to down by Temple Street. That would be thousands of feet of main. I think at some point, the water department will probably be proposing to connect what we installed to what they have to eliminate those two dead ends. But I think
Good.
they'd also like us to install a bunch of it now, but
Okay.
we'd rather not have to.
Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one of the issues the town has every summer is water use. We see it spike every summer, and I realize that this is a summer use as well, so temporary use.
Correct.
What kind of volumes are we talking about that would be adding to the existing municipal system if we switch over?
The per capita issue, Duxbury at 85 gallons and DEP wants us down to 60, 65. I'm not sure how you would work these calculations into yours. That would be above my head.
Well, what kind of volumes are we talking about? Maybe you can ballpark it for us.
I added up the number of gallons today and then divided by 365 days a year, and determined that it's about the equivalent to a one-bedroom house.
Well, it's only for 2 months, though.
Correct.
So what is it for those
At
60 days?
3,800 gallons a week.
I'm sorry?
3,800 gallons a week.
3,800 a week?
If
Okay.
you multiply that times 8 weeks that they actually use it, and then divide it by 365 gallons a day, it's 100 gallons per day. And most of the Title Vs I do, everybody in town's running 500, 600, 700 gallons a day.
Okay.
So it's a lot less than your average single-family home.
And what does that do to our pressure for the rest of the town, for the rest of the area?
I don't think it will affect it, personally.
Well, is the town going to address this at all? Or are we relying upon the,
Yeah, I'm going to ask them in a second.
Okay, done
But I
with
do
me
have
for
one
questions?
more question for
Yeah.
you before I ask them to come up. Why not just maintain the wells? If it's, is there anything broken about,
Well, when I started my presentation, the point was that if they're going to use this gorgeous barn they've put hundreds of thousands of dollars into already, they need a 6-inch fire line going into the building. So they're bearing the cost of running the 8-inch main up from Temple Street up to this barn and into it. And they're willing to, they don't have a problem with paying $7,500 to bring some drinking water in there also to accommodate the barn as well as the farmhouse and the infirmary and the swimming pool.
I'm just wondering why you're in the well business, why they didn't just do a well for the new barn.
Well, there are two reasons. The town of Duxbury equalizes the pH, or levels it off, makes it so it's not acidic, and so it won't eat the pipes, and so they won't have to replace the plumbing in the farmhouse in another 20 years. And also the testing is a challenge for them. They have to hire operators to come in and test the water, and if they can reduce their consumption of well water and utilize the town water, then that would make it a lot easier for them.
Okay, thank you. Some rebuttal here from our water department. If anybody would like to jump up here. Go right ahead.
Hi, Mark Cloud, Water and Sewer Superintendent.
And Sheila Scarzi, DPW Director. Just some of that memo was from an email I sent to Rainey. Just for context, my background, I'm your DPW Director, but I'm a professional engineer, civil engineer. My background is in water supply and distribution engineering. I've spent over 25 years focusing on just that. This particular layout is something I just cannot support. I've spent most of my career trying to clean up spaghetti services and correct these types of issues. So unfortunately, I can't get behind this. I understand their argument for it, and it's nothing personal, but it's just not correct design practice. So in terms of your question about pressure system-wide, this would be negligible.
Right.
But there would be potential pressure issues within Camp Wing itself if you were to accept this proposal.
Now, you mentioned cleaning up spaghetti systems like this. Do you have any concerns for Camp Wing down the road by setting up a single meter on this building and running everything off of it?
With the 4-tier water billing system that we have, the cost is going to escalate really quickly when it's all going through the 1 meter. It'll put them up into the top tier very quickly. So they'll be getting a very large bill every summer.
Yeah, and I guess thank you. I'm more wondering about, you maybe caught on the phrase spaghetti systems. Is Camp Wing going to have any problems with this system, in your opinion, as an engineer for 25 years?
Potentially, yes.
Okay, and what would that be?
An example would be if somebody is topping off the pool with a hose. They put the hose in the water. You create a cross connection, backflow situation. Then you could back siphon that into multiple buildings. This is a camp serving potable water to children. So as public water suppliers, we have a responsibility, and we take that very seriously. So if we see a layout that has more potential for cross connections, such as this one, obviously we're going to call that out. And this is inconsistent with your rules and regs, and your rules and regs are similar to rules and regs in other communities. It's very common to require individual service lines and individual meters.
Anybody have any?
A comment in regards to your
Yeah,
cross connection?
if I could, does anybody have any questions for our water department and DPW director?
No more questions for me, no.
Cindy,
No
you
more
all right?
questions for me.
I'm all set.
Okay. Any members of the public or Crossroads?
Paul Candy from Crossroads.
You do have to. Yep.
Your cross connection, the autofills on the pool are all air gap, so it's a non-issue in regards to the pool. And we would also be willing to do some sort of cross-contamination, backflow. We would consider that. But as far as the pool goes, that's a non-issue. It's
So that's
eight inch
just one
air
example?
gap.
Folks, so the microphone's not to just amplify your voice, so the public can hear on the,
Yeah, the pools would be equipped with air gap in regards to the autofills.
Thank you.
That was just one example I gave. That still doesn't change
Certainly,
my
but I just wanted
recommendation.
to correct the
So-
fact that you were speaking in error in regards to the pool.
Well, she wasn't speaking in error in terms of the principle of the thing.
Right.
It was your particular circumstance that you're saying is different, so.
Providing some
She-
clarification.
Right. Mr. Chairman, if I may, oh, go ahead.
go right ahead.
And that's all right, Freeman has something to say.
I had a question for Mr. Cloud. I was wondering what the thresholds are, the different levels of water consumption. At what point does the, now that we know
The accelerator, essentially.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the answer, the question.
the different step levels on water consumption, at what point, how many gallons do you use before it becomes more expensive?
There's 4 tiers, I believe. The first one is at 20, and then it steps up to 40, and then 60,000 gallons. And then the 4th tier is anything over that.
So the lower the usage, the less you pay per gallon.
Yeah.
So it incentivizes less use. And, I think on Brian's point, we're concerned, the water is going to be most used during the 2 months that are the hardest for us to absorb that impact. So I hear where you're going, and I think our hands are tied here. I don't know if there's any middle ground. I don't know.
Mark,
The other-
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you can go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing is that water, at some point, we'll need to put PFAS mitigation into our water supply, and that cost obviously will be borne by the residents and users of water, right? So that's another cost that's going to be coming in there and will impact the rates, both low and obviously will impact the higher users more, I suspect, when we do the water rate study. So that's something else to bear in mind is PFAS mitigation.
I have 2 questions. Mark, just a point. We have also retained somebody for a water rate study.
Yes.
Do we know when we're going to have that done?
I think they said maybe February, March.
Okay. The other end of this is, it sounds like a big cost here, this $100,000 range. It's all this additional piping and necessary for individual water meters. Is there any wiggle room to work with Camp Wing to lessen that burden or cost? And I don't know if this is a question for Sheila too.
That'd be a question for us, Mr. Chairman,
Other than
as the commissioners. I don't think that would be the staff.
from a engineering,
Oh, I thought you meant like a cost
from an
abatement or
engineering.
something.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the cost itself, but the engineering of it.
We wish there was a better solution for this, but unfortunately, like Sheila said, this is kind of the industry standards. And we have to look out for the cross connection, and, when the spaghetti lines, somebody could be doing a project in the rear of the building, not realizing that there's a water line back there, hit it. Whereas when you do a development, all the water lines are out front, straight off the water main.
So I don't know if that's one of the, obviously there's a cost associated with having multiple lines in there, which is but there is I don't know if we can discuss this or we have the ability to discuss this, but about at least reducing the cost of the meter connection? I know that we raised it recently from 1,000, I think, to 750. We can mitigate part of the cost. I mean, we need to comply with and support what our DPW director and superintendent have said to us. So need to comply with that and support that. But is there an option for us to maybe minimize the impact by waiving some fees? I don't know.
I don't know if we're able to do that and what the precedents
anti-aid
would.
amendment would prohibit it.
It's prohibited to do that?
The
even-
anti-aid amendment in the Constitution would prohibit it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So thanks for all the information to help us better understand the issue. I think you're hearing support for the activities at Camp Wing, but personally, the town overall is looking at a 20-year, $100 million-ish expense of improving our water distribution system. And Fernando, I'm glad you mentioned the PFAS. That's another component. There are lots of huge ticket issues, and I realize that this is a drop in the bucket, so to speak, in the overall scheme of things. But I think as a Board of Water Commissioners, we need to be very sensitive to every application that's coming before us and make sure that we're not setting things up in the wrong direction. We have very talented professional staff. We have talented vendors in town as well who do a great job around town. But in terms of looking at what's in the best interest of the town, I'm very comfortable going with the recommendation of our DPW director and water superintendent for the reasons they listed and explained this evening.
I almost wonder here, and I see Freeman's jumping up here, if there's an opportunity to further discuss this amongst yourselves to come up with some better plan. But I don't know.
I'm just wondering how I'm going to handle the next pool house, the next guest house, the next barn that wants to run from the house out. I mean, it makes sense. What Sheila would like makes sense. Run the water main down the street and then tap off of that new water main. And I would imagine that her biggest concern is cross connection. If there's a water main breakout in the street and somebody has a hose in a pool, which won't be in the case here, but if there is some fixture that could possibly siphon back, we're willing to provide a backflow preventer that will eliminate any possibility of that happening. But I can see if you're building a development, you don't want to have 1 meter out in the street and then everybody splits the cost of the water for the 10 houses. This is one owner, this is one nonprofit organization, and they just want one service and 1 meter. The letter indicates that every service shall have a meter. Well, that's what we'd like, 1 service and 1 meter, not multiple services. And we want to just feed an outbuilding or 2. So,
Sheila, do you have any counterpoints to this? Are you still, we are dealing, it is a nonprofit that serves our community and does a lot of good for a lot of people, so
Right, and
really
we,
hard to-
Mark and I both understand
Yeah.
that. Believe me, neither one of us wants to be up here saying what we're saying tonight. I've looked at this, trying to figure out what else could we do here. Short of extending that main, no, I don't.
What do you mean by that?
I don't have any.
Short of
Alternate.
extending the main?
If you extended the main to the pool and ran the individual services, that is the correct way to lay this out. So that's, there's no getting around it.
What's,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yes, so for Sheila. In a residential house, and somebody brought this up just a second ago, in a residential house, you've got a water connection going to the house, and then if you have a swimming pool, that's just connected to what's going on in the house. I mean, how is this different than than a residential house in town?
This is multiple buildings with distinct uses. This has a laundry facility, I believe a cafeteria, an infirmary. You took the cafeteria off? Okay, I misspoke there. An infirmary, a pool. That's a lot of draw from essentially a single 2-inch line, not to mention the excessive service length that's being proposed here. So I can't speak for what may or may not have happened throughout town on private property. Running a water main from a house to a shed that serves that house is a little different than piggybacking off of a 2-inch line for multiple buildings that are serving children in a summer camp.
What about
Completely
barns?
different uses.
What about barns or accessory structures? Are those required to have separate meters?
I have to ask Mark on that.
Generally, any building that they would use and they'd want water for, they'd need a separate service for.
So if you have a barn at your house and you have animals out there, so you have some water access or even a hose out at the barn, you have to have a separate service for the barn?
Generally, we wouldn't want that. When a house is built under code, the water line comes into the house, and then the whole outside of the house and inside of the house has backflow protection on all its faucets, so you don't run into that backflow situation. So we don't support running lines from one building to another to another.
Okay, so the answer is yes. So anybody who's building a barn or an accessory dwelling or shed or any other structure on their property is required to have a separate meter.
Yes.
But this is all new, so this is why it's before us. There's no connection now,
Right.
right? So that's why you're not seeing the barns and everything else. Although I don't think that, for me anyway, that doesn't change anything.
No,
If it applies, it applies.
I was just trying to understand.
Because I think the reason why you're trying to understand, because Mr. Boynton mentioned that
That
this is.
people typically
People do this all the
run-
time here in Duxbury, right? If they build a accessory, for instance, the house there actually on King Caesar, no, not King Caesar, on Powder Point, there's 2 dwellings on there. Do they have 1 meter or 2 meters?
I'm not familiar with it.
There's a lot of double.
So I have to
dwellings.
commend them for coming forward and being honest with what they're proposing.
Right.
Because it is just this kind of stuff that happens behind the scenes.
There we go.
That creates these spaghetti service problems, not just in this community, in other communities. And like I said, I've spent a good portion of my career trying to correct that,
Okay,
so.
yeah.
One more question, Mike.
Yeah, go ahead.
But not necessarily from Sheila, but it seems to me that I just want to make sure I have this correct, that the only reason that this is before us is because Camping wants to be able to connect their barn for a sprinkler system. And in doing so wants to include things like the residence building. I've heard nothing to say that couldn't be done with their present well system, except that somehow testing the wells is inconvenient. Is there more to it than that? I mean, could this be done? Could they do all that they want to do and just continue with their well system, having to test their own wells for sure? But is that a possibility?
I doubt it. The well is probably not large enough to provide enough flow to the fire sprinkler system.
Okay, all right.
Well, I had the same question. I kind of asked this to Camp Wing because I'm not feeling a ton of support for this. Would it make sense to step this back and come up with a plan that maybe a quasi-well town water plan that works for our DPW department?
I'm having a hard time not saying that's what we're doing. We want to run one service in and provide potable domestic water, and we want to run the fire line. I think before we complete this discussion, I'd like to know what I'm going to do with the next 25 pool houses and guest houses in town. And I'm picturing 4 water services going out from one property to the street with 4 shutoffs all in a row, and we're going to run the guest house off this line, the barn off of that line, and the pool house off of that house, and the main line off of this, the main house off of this line. And I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think that they do have a concern with cross-connection. It wouldn't be their concern to not have the flow at the end of the line. You know, that's their problem. But cross-connection could potentially be an issue. If you run the water line into your house and then out to your barn, is the hose at the barn going to be sitting in a bucket that will potentially siphon it back? And I've offered several times, we'll put in a 2-inch backflow preventer and prevent that from ever happening again. The spaghetti lines we run in the property would not be their spaghetti lines, because we're not running it down the street and then feeding the building individually. It's your water, but we would be installing our own lines on the property to feed one owner's building, and that being a nonprofit organization. I don't know how else to put it, but
No, I get it.
and again, before we complete this discussion, I ran a line from a customer's house on Bolus Road up to their pool house, 100 feet away. It's going to poke out into the pool house and feed their little kitchenette and their outside shower and all that kind of stuff. Am I supposed to run that all the way out to the street next time and get a separate meter and pay $7,500 to hook up for this shower for 2 months of the year? It seems kind of silly to me. And there are hundreds and hundreds of houses in this town with that scenario.
I guess the answer there is yes, they are supposed to be doing that. So these are, no, Randy's shaking his head, no. But that's what we're hearing our water people say, is that each,
But the regulations don't say it.
The regulations don't say it.
The regulations state that you shall have 1 meter for each service,
I gave you all.
period.
It's on page 10.
It doesn't say you have to have 1 service and 1 meter for each building, which is what we're asking for. We're asking for 1 meter and 1 service.
This is different than a guest house or a pool house, though, because of the nature of the use. It's far greater than a pool
okay,
house.
so when I just asked about the barn or the guest house needing, supposed to be having a separate service, that is not what our rules and regulations
No.
say. So,
In fact, if you take a look on page 10 of those regs, each dwelling unit shall be individually serviced and metered. The water department will furnish and maintain all meters to be installed on the premises of the consumer as follows. Each dwelling unit, 1 meter. A dwelling unit for the purpose of these rules and regulations shall be A, a single-family dwelling, B, each apartment in an apartment building or other structure, C, each condominium unit in a condominium, and D, each townhouse or dwelling unit in the townhouse complex. They all relate specifically to dwelling units.
We have 1 dwelling unit on this property.
But you also have a very different, higher intensity use, because you're adding the barn, a 3,700 square foot barn, you're adding a laundry facility and a pool house. It's going to be much higher usage than a single family dwelling pool house. That is why you're here, because of those 3.
So that makes it different from
Yeah.
the backyard pool house.
Because of volume, yes.
But then if we reach a certain level, then the price goes up.
It does. And in fact, the tiered structure plays out, so if you use more than 20,000, 0 to 20,000 gallons is $4.55 per thousand. To 20,001 to 60,000 is $5.83 per thousand. 60,001 to 120,000 gallons is $6.70, and then 120 and over is $8.50. What do you guys use? Do you know what you use?
I think we would end up using 110 gallons a day times 365. We would be in the second tier.
So instead of paying $4.55 per thousand, you'd be paying $5.83.
Yep.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
because we haven't done a water rate study.
I haven't done a water rate study yet.
Yep.
It's the pleasure of the board. And what's the pleasure of Camp Point? I mean, we don't have to take a motion tonight. I mean, we don't even have a motion in front of us, so.
Well, actually,
Well,
it's the motion, quite simply,
I think,
is.
I think the regulations are clear, so it answers Mr. Boynton's message, is that Camp Wing, the uses is completely different from a single dwelling unit, right? So I want to make that clear that that this is different, all right? So, yeah, it seems like we require 6 different connections. Based on what our DPW director and superintendent are saying. Unfortunately, we can't reduce the cost because we're not allowed to. So in terms of the connection itself, but
It appears our hands are tied.
hands are tied.
So I would say, that being the case, our options are to, because I think normally when they fund a project like this, the swimming pools, the $1 million swimming pool that they're putting in, they don't already have the money. They're hoping to get it by the time it's time to put water in the pool, which will be trucked in, and we're not going to buy it from you folks, because that would be several years' use. We're just, when they backwash the filter, they've got to put, a few hundred gallons back into it, is the primary use of the water. But I think if they just can't afford the infrastructure to do this, then they'd still need the fire line to go into the barn. They'd still like the domestic service to go into the farmhouse and the barn. And they'll find some other way to provide the makeup water for the pool, and the infirmary can stay just like it is. Is that what you're thinking, Ben?
Yeah, unless we can run.
You have to speak to the microphone. This is Ben Palmer, Director of Operations for Camp Wing.
Hi there. All I was going to add is we've got to get water to that pool for next summer, and if we could still run it the route that we're suggesting, we're proposing from the barn, but we can add a meter at the barn, so we're still, still metered water, but it's so we'll pay. Then that would be the $7,000 cost setup, but for us, at least, we're then running a 2-inch line across the property instead of having to run that 8-inch main down Keene Street. So I think it still meets what everyone's trying to do here.
Does it?
Is it?
That's a question for Mark and Sheila.
Yeah, I think what you were saying is you were just going to install a small piece of main for now to support the one service and the fire line.
At what dimension?
The pool will be in the future.
What size?
We need to. The pool's the one we need to do now. We don't have a well to support the pool. We do have a well that can support the other buildings in the short term.
Why didn't you guys suggest it's not going to pass, right? What
No,
you're
so
proposing is
that-
not going to pass
yeah,
now.
That
So
still
what-
wouldn't be
what
an
are-
individual service.
What's that?
Because you're piggybacking it off that 2-inch
Right,
line. And it's excessively long, that lateral.
right. The idea was to run it up,
Which is-
was to tap it off of the 8-inch main, not do another
Right,
cross-country run.
right.
Yeah, with a smaller meter, right.
Yeah.
Well, we've been at this for quite a bit here. It would be my pleasure, I would like you to step this back, not be negotiating this on the floor here. If you can't come to a resolution, we don't need to, approve anything. But if you would like us to approve something that's been, that has a little bit more support, or maybe with this backwash, something that would be more palatable to our staff, I think that's something I would prefer.
By the way, just so you know.
Rather than just outright rejecting.
Yeah,
things.
this is here because they're looking for an exception to the rule, so if they follow the rule, it won't come back. It would just be done in-house.
And if you need, if if you need us, I think we'll be here. You're partners in this community, and we value the work that you do. I don't need a vote tonight. Unless the board feels
Nope,
necessary.
Unless you require us to vote on something, I think it's back to the drawing board.
All right.
I think it sounds like we're not going to save Camp Wing any money tonight, so we're going to,
I don't think that may be, yes. I'm not going to answer.
That's the outcome, but that's a bit
Yeah.
tough, right? So
Yeah, that's
It's just
we
what-
don't want to,
It's
right?
accurate.
it's all we're trying to do.
accurate, but
It's
it's-
all we're trying to do.
Correct.
It's
I understand.
accurate, but it's not the intent, I mean, so, anyway, that's enough said.
I move that the board adjourn their meeting as the Water and Sewer Commissioners and reconvene as a Select Board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Thank you.
Amy, aye.
Michael, aye.
Cindy, aye.
All right, we are back. And we still have Jim. How are you? You still up there, Mr. Lampert?
I'm actually kind of amused. I don't know where that background behind my head came from.
That makes us
I
feel
think my
warm.
head is in front of, I think that's East Battery in Charleston, South Carolina.
Wow,
Wonderful.
looks
And
very
my
nice,
head
Jim.
All right.
Yeah, but what if my head is in front of the place I lived when I was 11 years old?
Oh, wow. Imagine that.
All right. I asked Mr. Reed to add this item, a discussion, review, and vote on the November 18th, 2024 special town meeting warrant article 1, the MBTA communities. I was not ready to view my position on it. I don't know if any other members are. We have we have one additional member, and maybe we can make some kind of recommendation. We're not required to. We can certainly wait till town meeting, but I am certainly ready to make my recommendation tonight. I recommend that the town of Duxbury indefinitely postpone Article 1, the MBTA communities. I make this recommendation for the following reasons. I swore an oath as a Select Board member to abide by the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3A is the law today. Thus, I will not recommend a no vote. However, guidelines are not law. The Town of Milton has argued this point in Attorney General versus Town of Milton, SJC 13580. Milton made arguments that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities in issuing guidelines rather than going through the steps to promulgate regulations overstepped its enforcement authority. If the SJC answers this issue in Milton's favor, the compliance deadlines for all communities, including Duxbury, and additional sanctions set could have limited force and effect. The SJC will not decide this case before town meeting, and probably not before December 31st, 2024. Where the law is unsettled, town meeting should not vote this article. In addition, because this case is pending, we cannot advise town meeting whether the Attorney General's remedies for noncompliance are exclusive to the grants specified in the statute, nor whether the SJC will permit the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities to withhold additional grant funding via guidelines, nor whether the AG or a special master can establish the multifamily zoning districts in a town that has not complied. Town meeting deserves to know the actual penalties for noncompliance. The town, for good reasons, requested an extension of 1 year. We requested time to conduct an economic feasibility analysis to support the highest possible number of affordable units in the new overlay districts. The Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities specifically rejected this basis. While the town has included a provision in the bylaw in the event that the EOHLC approves an economic feasibility analysis down the road, they have given us no assurances they would do so. Instead, they recommended a fallback provision in the inclusionary zoning for 10% affordable units. which would necessarily set Duxbury further back in ever reaching the 40B requirement. Significantly, if this zoning were in place on November 19th, a developer would only be required to follow the bylaw in place, not one in the works. Such a circumstance exacerbates barriers to affordable housing for low-income households, and EOHLC should have granted this extension. Lastly, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities will not likely pre-approve the zoning in the printed warrant before town meeting. In its rejection letter, they encouraged our MBTA Communities Task Force to submit a pre-adoption application for review, which they did with our new planner. Again, referring to the guidelines, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities said it could take 90 days, but they would do their best to provide feedback to the town prior to town meeting. It would be irresponsible in my capacity to recommend town meeting take a vote on a zoning article that may not be in its final form. I encourage my fellow board members to join in this recommendation for indefinite postponement. Cindy? I thought that you were,
What was that? Sorry, talking to me?
I thought you wanted to say something. I thought your hand went up.
Oh, no, but I'm good. I appreciate your position on this, Mike. You know, as you all know, I wasn't here to discuss last week, and I think at that time, and maybe even tonight, I would have voted to endorse prior to listening to Jim, Mr. Lambert talk about the problems in the bylaw itself. I am very concerned with the fact that this is not ready, that it's not a good bylaw, in that there's confusions. We have enough confusions in our bylaws already. I'm not opposed to the idea behind the MBTA communities, in that we have a housing crisis in this Commonwealth, and but this is probably not the way to go. The way to go about it, and maybe with a little bit more deliberation. Not a lot. I mean, I really don't think that giving communities another 10 years or whatever to hash things out is going to solve our housing crisis. I think things need to be done deliberately and as they go along, moving them right along, but that's what Mike has to say.
Okay. Does anybody else want to add it? I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Cindy. I was kind of going around the room here. Go ahead, Fernando.
Yeah, just, thank you for that, Mike. Just for clarification, I know that Jim has raised some questions around the actual article as it is written.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this article had been reviewed by the planning board and the planner and zoning, and so they voted to approve it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a bit perturbed about that. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. And I confirmed this with Rainey today, too,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to say something that was inaccurate. But,
Right.
Rainey, do you care to provide that update about how we sought pre-approval and we still haven't received it?
Yeah, sorry, I gotta look it up because I texted it to you. Sorry. Yeah, the pre-application is complete, and we're waiting from EOHLC to schedule a meeting with us to go over the application or send us written feedback.
So it could change.
Could change, but also heard Mr. Lambert saying, the context could change, but Mr. Lambert is pointing out kind of language issues, right,
agree.
and references, and I thought that would have been covered by the writers of this article, and
Well, remember, we were either without a planner, and, I mean, you guys did, I think
Yeah.
the group did have some assistance with
We had a consultant, we had town
and-
council. I mean, this has been, this has
We
had
got
more eyes on it
technical
than the
assist-
bylaw itself.
Yeah, we got technical assistance. I don't,
So
Yeah, go ahead.
what I'm concerned about is historically, whenever we've come and put a zoning bylaw in front of us in town meeting, and I've been to several town meetings when we've attempted to make a change in a zoning bylaw, and Mr. Lambert is invariably one that stands up and points out all these, and then we try to do amendments on the floor, and it becomes, and then we IP it because it becomes too confusing. So I was hoping that from that point of view, at least we would be, it would be clear, it would be robust enough to withstand challenge from the floor in terms of its language and its connection, but by the sounds of it.
It is. It's just one guy's opinion, right, Jim?
and also, but it hasn't withstood the challenge of the executive office.
Oh, yeah, no,
There might be necessary motions from the floor because because of their feedback.
feedback. Well, we don't want to do that.
So,
Because that's where we are.
Yep.
so I think, Mike, you make excellent points. I think last week, Fernando made some excellent points. You know, he'd like to see town meeting take a position on this. And, you know, we work for the residents, so that would give us an idea of where we're going, and the state an idea of where our town is going. So, and then we now find out that there's some flaws, and that often happens. Writing bylaws is very, very difficult, and especially when, you've got some drafts going, and, the first thing where it doesn't reference both sections, well, that's probably because at some point there was a section added, and and then it doesn't get caught, and, writing bylaws, changing bylaws are tough, and it's a tough conversation, and a tough.
Especially under the gun.
Yeah. So I don't blame anybody for that per se. I mean, it's, this is all, so I think, we have some options.
Do we test it, or do we indefinitely postpone it? That's what you're saying.
Well, we recommend to town meeting, remember,
Yeah.
it's town meeting gets to make all the decisions here. So we either, can recommend that we think they should indefinitely postpone, which doesn't give us their vote or their position.
Right.
So we're going to still be not unknowing of that and move forward, or town meeting will decide that they want to go ahead and state their position.
Mr. Chairman,
Before I go to Jim, I want
Yeah.
your.
So IP, I realize technically it's not taking a position, but it has the effect of putting us in non-compliance as of January 1st.
Correct.
Right.
So I think it's important to appreciate that it's essentially a no vote. I understand it gets there a different way, and I appreciate your analysis on this. I don't disagree with anything that you said. I come at it from a bit of a different perspective, having been through this process the last couple of months and seeing it from the other side. I think there are likely to be further developments. I hope there are going to be further developments. This is definitely not the way Duxbury would have done this if we had the chance to do it the right way, meaning developing a new district potentially for more housing. I'm concerned that it's unlikely that anything material will change between now and the end of the year that will materially affect our compliance or non-compliance. In other words, I would like to kick the can, and that's why we asked, frankly, for the extension for a year, which I thought was entirely appropriate. We wanted more time. We're not going to get more time. So the way I look at this is, apart from legal challenges, potential legislative action, of which I don't think there will be, or any other external force, I look at this from the perspective of what is Duxbury's legal obligation as we understand it today, and that is, and I'm one person, and that is to pass some sort of bylaw that's compliant with the statute. I don't agree with the way this was done. I don't agree that this is the best possible bylaw. In fact, I know we can do better. Had we had the time, we would have done better. But if there are no immediate changes in the legal landscape, I think we're stuck with either being in compliance or in non-compliance. We don't have an opportunity to do another vote after special town meeting before the end of the year. So whatever we decide then is going to carry us to the line in the sand.
Yep.
And from my perspective, although this is certainly not something I would recommend wholeheartedly, in fact, I would recommend with significant reservation, I do think that what the working group has put together is minimally compliant, at the very least, with the state law that we're being ordered to comply with and threatened. And again, to your point, Mike, all that stuff may very well go away, and I think it should, particularly the Attorney General's finger wagging, because I think that's quite intimidating for municipalities to think they're going to be on the receiving end of some pretty dire consequences. But I have to take her at her word that that's what she's going to do, and force towns to comply one way or the other, even if it includes appointing a special master, and somebody else does it, somebody who doesn't even live in town. So I would, if we were making a recommendation this evening, I would likely be the only vote in support of the article, but that's not in any way to suggest that I think that this is the right thing right now for the town. But I think it's the legally appropriate outcome for us at this time, given what we know about the landscape and circumstances.
Yeah.
The only, and to Brian's point, what I would also like, either our town manager or our board, is to exhaust this delay. There are issues. I know that we've asked for it. Brian was excellent and Rainey was excellent, meeting with the director of the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. Their letter, I would suggest, is inconsistent with a lot of the goals of this law, namely this issue with the affordable housing component. And to Brian's point, that we would like, there would be a better opportunity to do this without the typographical errors that Jim suggests, or any other additions that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities might throw at us in the next couple of weeks. I think we still have a good faith argument. We're going to have new elected officials tomorrow. I don't think that this needs to end with a letter. And I think it's an important vote for this community and also for the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. I would encourage us to continue on with that path. I think that there's opportunity to work here and work with our legislative officials before town meeting to get this on a better track. I hope. Maybe I'm just too optimistic, but Mr. Lampert, you've been very patient. Do you want to say anything more than what you said during open session?
Yeah, a little, please.
Sure.
I was part of the group that was responsible for creating our current bylaw, has to be the better part of 20 years ago. Obviously, that bylaw, particularly by itself when it was written, and as it's been amended since, has not been a model of what bylaws should be. Which is why you have now created a group that look at that bylaw and get rid of, to the extent possible, the inconsistencies in it. So both to get rid of inconsistencies and also to come up with a bylaw that frankly people can read and make intelligent decisions based on what it says. I spent the better part of 15 years chairing the zoning board. And it was very clear to me then, and it is very clear now, that we must have a bylaw, long-term, that frankly most people can read and know what they can and cannot do. I'm now chairing the group that's looking at the current bylaw and what needs to be done to it to make it into a piece of paper that meets that standard. If this bylaw is passed in its present form, it's quite clear to me that it will become obviously part of a confusing, inconsistent, and internally, frankly, extraordinarily hard to work with document. It would go on to the group that's looking at the bylaw to try and come up with a system, something better docket. We could do that. It's going to take some time. We look badly served in terms of being able to accomplish something, but the fact that Chris left, he put more time into this than anyone else has. But my goal, basically, probably for the past 30 years working with zoning, is to have something that has clear rules that work. Hopefully, given the time, the group that's working together on this now can accomplish that. They could accomplish that if this were passed in a form that frankly creates a number of problems that none of us want to litigate. Litigation is a terrible way to resolve anything. Whether you IP it or whether you pass it, or put it to a vote, it may fail. If you IP it, that creates time for us to accomplish our job of trying to come up with a document that serves the town's interests. If you pass it, we'll just add it to the pile of things that we have to go through to create that document. Thanks.
Any other members of the public? Now, my recommendations for indefinitely postponing it, we have several members that have voiced yes or no's. Is it the pleasure of the board to take 1 or 2 votes or no votes at all? And I'm happy to hear that.
Other committee, well, the Finance Committee has voted.
Right. Just a straight vote,
It was a straight vote. Well, it was,
like yes or no.
right, it was to support, and then
Right.
how many for or opposed. I think it's important, this is an especially thorny issue. In fact, we're calling a special town meeting just for this. So I think it's entirely appropriate for the residents and the folks who are going to attend town meeting to vote to understand where the select board's coming from. And this has been well documented in the Clipper as well, which is terrific. We certainly appreciate that. More information is better, and this is one important piece of information I think we need to get out so voters can understand where things are coming from, and certainly we can address this again on the floor of town meeting if folks want to hear our opinions in more detail if they're not watching this video. So I'm happy to offer the motion and then as presented, and then we can vote accordingly. I don't know how you'd vote an IP though.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Did we take a first vote?
You just say,
Yeah.
you just vote to indefinitely postpone it. We do it all the time.
Go right
Well,
ahead,
you're voting to
Cindy.
recommend indefinite postponement.
Yeah.
We're only making a recommendation to town meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah, not just, are we meeting, prior to the, meeting on, next Monday?
You're meeting you'll be meeting prior to
Next
the,
Monday.
yeah, you'll be meeting in advance of the special town meeting on the 18th, so you'll probably be meeting at 6 that night.
Yeah,
We're not meeting on Veterans Day.
No, we're closed.
no, that's a good idea. I don't know, I just thought that if I need more time to think about it, you know, it's such a complicated thing. It's such a complicated thing, you know, I bring my mind either to IP it or to vote to endorse, but, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I'm ready to vote.
Well,
But I'll
I hear what
come up with
Cindy's saying. I
something.
think we
Go
should.
ahead and do it.
okay. Do you want to take a vote?
I think let's just, let's try it.
Okay.
Let's try it. Let's try your motion to indefinitely postpone and see where we go.
Start with that.
Motion to
Then we can do a
recommend.
second.
Motion to recommend.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that would be the motion?
First motion, and then we can do a second one if that fails.
Okay.
Or we can do both. I don't mind.
Well, we have to,
So a motion to recommend indefinitely postponing.
There you go.
Yeah.
okay. I move that the Select Board recommend to indefinitely postpone Article, what article is it, 1, right? Of the November 18th, 2024 special town meeting as presented.
All those in favor? Aye. Michael, aye. Let's do a roll call vote. We have a person remotely.
Second. Oh, I'll second.
Sorry, I was,
A second and a roll call vote. Michael, aye.
Fernando, nay.
Brian, no.
Amy, no.
No.
Okay.
I move that the Select Board support and recommend the approval of the November 18th, 2024 special town meeting, Article 1, regarding MBTA community zoning as presented.
Second.
All those in favor, roll call vote.
Fernando, nay.
Brian, aye.
Abstain, Michael?
Amy, no.
Cindy, aye, yes.
Right down the middle.
So it's a 2-2-1 vote right there. Okay. There you go. Well done.
All right.
Will you be taking a position at some point in
I-
the future to break the tie, or?
I will, I'm going to take a pause on, my recommendation was to indefinitely postpone this. I respect our board
Yeah.
and our board's position, and that's why I'm abstaining.
Okay.
But so I'm just going to take a pause on that for now, but that's the reason I'm abstaining.
I
It's
get, I
not-
get it.
That's fine. There's plenty of arguments on
Yep.
both sides.
Yep.
And that, you know, that was the fallback. I mean, I get it. I mean, I could, yeah. I think
Just don't think it's ready for
it's a
town meeting.
tough call.
All right.
Town manager report.
Town manager's report.
Very briefly, just to let you know, been working since, mid to end of summer on irrigation regulations. Finally wrapped them up today after meeting with staff. Thank you for your recommendations. We got that through. It'll be on the agenda for November 25th.
So get your systems in quickly, right?
Damn right. Hurry up. Get them in there before the ground freezes. The budget work continues. Mary and I are meeting with departments seemingly every day, and it's going well. We are preparing for the November 18th special town meeting. I want to remind everybody to please vote tomorrow. If your candidate wins, don't gloat. If your candidate loses, don't despair. This election cycle's been hard on all of us. Treat others the way you want to be treated. We will all need it at the end of the day.
Be nice to have a state rep, though.
It would, wouldn't it? So that's where we are. Don't forget to vote.
People, excuse me, I'm going to sign off at this stage. I don't think I have anything to add from here.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Lambert.
Thanks, Jim.
All right.
That's all I got for now.
May I ask a water-related issue?
Yeah.
Question regarding the PFAS mitigation and where we're at with that. Are we on, you know, I know town meeting appropriated the funds so that we could be ahead of the curve, and I just wondered if we could get an update. I think there's a grant application or something that maybe,
Well, Fernando and I had a nice little meeting with the core players. He and I and Mark and Sheila and Ryan Trahan. Was that Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday, on Alston.
And Alston, who's Alston Potts, who's almost forgot his name. And everything seems to be on track. We're
good. So we're still ahead of the game and,
Yeah.
okay, good.
Yeah, everything's on course.
We will open up the RFQ for the owner's project manager. You know, that guy that does it for the DPW building, that really good guy?
Joe Sullivan.
Joe Sullivan. We're going to get another good Joe Sullivan here on November 22nd, all right? So that will...
We have to, because the project's over $1.5 million. When they're over $1.5 million, we're required by law to hire owner's project manager, so.
The owner's project, and then at some point, we're going to get a prioritization
Yep.
schedule
We
in
talked about that,
place.
too.
And
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's all
will
coming.
he be helping with that as well?
The owner's
manager?
project manager actually helps with the project, so he'll
Yeah.
oversee it in terms of not just what you just said.
Prioritization.
Yes, he'll have a hand in that, but mostly shepherding the project through, doing the physical work.
Yeah. Once we
Building it, once we have it all
have
funded
it prioritized,
and funded.
which well we're going to go to first.
And also, I'm not sure, and I can't remember,
Uh-huh.
maybe somebody else can, did we ever take a position as to the level, our
No.
target level?
No,
yet.
We probably should do that.
You'll need to.
We'll need to, and I think it's really important for us to understand what the regulations state. I just found out in that conversation, well, maybe it's not an agenda item, right, for me to discuss?
We're going to be talking about it when we have it's coming up on a future meeting.
Okay.
And the answer to your question is, yes, you do still need to vote the 0 through 4.
It might be helpful for us to do that sooner rather than later to help with the prioritization schedule.
It'll kind of be melded together, and it needs to be, because to determine the 0 through 4 category, you have to take into consideration other variables like what is compliant and what is not compliant.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm being a little obtuse because
It's complicated.
it is, without getting into a real heavy discussion.
Yeah. The problem I have with is with the regulations, right, and the PFAS levels, and the way that EPA is recommending that we measure it, and it, to me, doesn't make sense. We're still waiting to see what MA comes up with, right? So MA needs to come up with their own regulations, and they may totally ignore the EPA regulations, which basically takes the average of 4, and if one is below 4, it is 0. So when you do average it up, all the rest go below 4. So the whole thing is a bit strange.
It's a strange sliding scale.
Very strange. So I'm hoping that mass regulations provide better clarity and are better aligned with
Reality.
with the threat that PFAS is, right? So anyway,
We know
I'm
when
being
those
obtuse.
regulations are coming out, or are they?
They're still pending for what Mass
Yeah.
DEP is gonna say.
Well, hopefully, as soon as that comes out, we can meet with the water advisory and put some smart heads
Oh, yeah,
together
yeah.
and
Yeah,
take
yeah.
a
All of
position
that.
on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
levels.
But I get, rest assured, and I think I made that clear to the Water Advisory Board in my note, and I think I copied you on that note, Amy, is that we've been fighting this PFAS since the beginning, right? And we will do the right thing
And
for
we're on
PFAS mitigation in
schedule.
this town, and we just need to figure out
What the number is.
what the number is and what the compliance it's many moving parts, right? And another thing that actually comes into play is our favorite subject is that we are required to consume 62 gallons per habitant, whatever the per person is, right? We exceed that in the summer because we irrigate it, and irrigating is actually putting water back into the ground that we will treat for PFAS, so it's a complete waste of money, right?
Oh, geez,
and so
yeah.
therefore the residents will have to pay for this. So this thing is getting really, really complicated, and it impacts the prioritization, all right? So this has got, as I found out on Thursday, this is getting more and more complicated in many different, before it was simple, 4 parts per trillion, we need to be below it, but now it's got all sorts of complicated with the way the EPA is saying we need to comply with. The fact is that realization is that we consume a lot of water during the summer months, PFAS treated water that we're going to dump in the ground, and there's going to be a cost for that. So we just need to think about
But we
this.
are having the irrigation conversation. you
That's
said,
happening
next
either way.
week.
That's
So
happening,
that's
no, the
happening. So
25th.
is that premature, though,
25th.
based on
No,
this
not at all.
other conversation
It's
that I'm
separate and
hearing?
distinct.
That's just connections.
And that'll
future
be
connections.
the
Future
20
connections.
the 25th.
Yeah, future connections.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
One-day liquor licenses. We have a January 25th, 2025 Friends of the Council of Aging Black Tie Bingo. And I know we have a proponent here for that.
Mr. Brogna.
Mr. Brogdon.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Paul Brogna, 90 Humphreys Lane, President of the Council on Aging, Friends of the Council. You have before you a request for a one-day liquor license for the Black Tie Bingo event scheduled for Saturday night, January 25th, 2025, the Saturday night before the Super Bowl, as usual. I believe everything that's required is before you. We already have people calling and writing for tickets in advance, so we expect another sellout event as we have had in the past. And as you know, it's traditionally in the Ellison Room at the Council on Aging. We have usually 100, 110 people there, and we have a tip-certified waitress to serve the beer and the wine. So be more than happy to address any questions. And again, it's a similar event as what we've had many years in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm ready for a motion unless anybody has any questions.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. I'm very fortunate to be this board's liaison to the Council on Aging. And we're all familiar, I think, with the phenomenal work that goes on over there. But in large part, I don't know how well known this is, in large part it's underwritten by the Friends. And this is an important fundraising event for that. So a lot of good is going to come out of this. And I know it'll be a good time as well. So thank you to Paul and the Friends for continuing to support our senior center. I move that Mr. Paul Brogna, as a representative of the Friends of the Duxbury Council on Aging, is granted a one-day wine and malt license to hold a black tie bingo night on Saturday, January 25th, 2025 at the Duxbury Senior Center on 10 Mayflower Street from 6 p.m. till 10:30 p.m., contingent upon the conditions of the license.
Bingo. Oh, sorry, second.
Good.
All those in favor with a roll call vote, please.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Thank you. We have event permits. We have two on the same day. It's going to be a can't-miss day on December 1st of 2024. The first one being the Festival of Light celebration. If I could just, let me see if you got it right in front of you.
Right here.
This will be on the Millennium Town Green on Sunday, December 1st, 2024, from 1 to 7. Same as the last few years. Wonderful ceremony, a wonderful event, and looking forward to it again this year. If anybody has any questions, there being none, I'll take a motion.
I move that Mr. David Connors, as a representative of the Duxbury Rotary Club, is granted an event permit for the annual Festival of Light celebration to be held on the Millennium Town Green on Sunday, December 1st, 2024, from 1 p.m. till 7 p.m., contingent upon the conditions of the permit.
Second.
All those in favor, roll call vote, please.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Thank you. Now, holidays, the McGee's favorite holiday.
Yeah.
This will be on December 1st, 2024, from noon to 4 p.m. And I think we're all familiar with it.
Great
So
event.
I'll take a motion, unless anybody has questions or comments. We good? All right. Motion.
I move that Ms. Christine Sarpra, as the chairman of the Duxbury Newcomers Club, is granted an event permit for the holidays celebration to be held on Sunday, December 1st, 2024, from noon until 4 p.m., contingent upon the conditions of the permit.
Second.
All those in favor, roll call vote, please.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Get some minutes.
Now we have some minutes. I'm actually going to ask, I took a look at the executive session minutes, and I simply forgot to email. I did have a correction,
We can put
so
them on
we'll do it
another
another day.
Or you can just approve them as amended and just send them to me.
I don't know if they'll approve it, and I haven't written out. There was a certain paragraph that I just thought was I just want to take another.
Separate sets, is it one?
Do you-
It's
either this or
the,
this.
just B.
B, okay.
Okay, so we want to proceed with A?
A is fine, yeah. Yeah.
All right, I move to approve the October 28th, 2024 Select Board Executive Session Minutes A regarding the King Caesar Fund matter with the contents to remain sealed due to medical confidentiality as presented.
Second.
All those in favor with a roll call vote.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye.
Amy, aye.
Oh, and it says Cindy to abstain on that one. Okay.
You know what? I'm going to abstain as well, because I was not present for half of it. I'm going to abstain.
Okay,
Yeah.
302.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, and we'll kick the next one till next meeting.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Announcements.
We have 4 announcements, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Voting for the state and presidential election Tuesday, November 5th, 2024, that's tomorrow, will take place at the Lieutenant Timothy J. Steele Athletic Building located at 130 St. George Street from 7 o'clock a.m. till 8 o'clock p.m. Number 2, town offices will be closed on Monday, November 11th in observance of Veterans Day. And I would add that Duxbury American Legion Post 223 will hold an observance of Veterans Day at 11 a.m. at the post on West Street. Number 3, special town meeting will be on Monday, November 18th, 2024 at the Performing Arts Center, Alden Street, starting at 7 o'clock p.m. Please note that check-in will begin at 5:30 p.m. and we encourage everyone to get there early. No parking in fire lanes, and the public safety officials will be monitoring. 4th and finally, the next regularly scheduled Select Board meeting will be on Monday, November 25th, 2024, starting at 6:30 p.m. in the Mueller Room of Town Hall.
Before,
Yeah, I just want to make clear, we are meeting before town meeting on November 18th, though, right? Okay. What time are we meeting?
Most likely 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Before we adjourn, I was hoping that the town, you could ask the DPW to put up a couple of signs. I think it's an unusual time of year for town meeting. So if we could, oftentimes for town meeting, they'll have a sign when you get off of the off-ramp heading into Duxbury. It just reminds people, a couple out and about, a couple of signs strategically, maybe near the transfer station the weekend before, just a couple of signs.
For what? Oh,
For town meeting, just
I thought you were
remind.
talking about the election, 'cause those
No,
things
no,
are
no.
everywhere.
No.
Okay, I'm like, what?
Special
Town
town
meeting. Just to remind people,
Yeah.
because it's an unusual one. Okay, thank you.
I move to adjourn. Or I
So
would like a
moved.
motion.
Second.
All those in favor, roll call vote.
Fernando, aye. Brian, aye.
Michael, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Good night, Cindy. Good to see you.
Good to see you,
Good
Cindy.
to see you, Cindy.